I know that nobody can see me right now, but I promise you that I'm here as soon as I click this button. One would think that after a moment of doing these that I would have my controls down pat, and I do not. And I appreciate your patience as I'm still trying to figure these things out. Welcome everybody to hashtag higher ed, hashtag change higher ed. Today's episode, we have I feel so fortunate to be able to be the moderator of this panel. One of the panelists, Dianna, she reached out to me a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, or I guess just in a weird time frame. And she's like, I have a great idea, and I got some great people, and I was like, wonderful. That's less like work that I need to do, and so I'm really, really happy to have our panelists here today. There's just a wealth of experience when it comes to student affairs and administrative side of higher education that, frankly, I have a very limited exposure to. Most of my time was in as a faculty member, a little bit of a staff member towards the end there. And so I'm really excited to talk to these folk, and because a lot of the other people that we've had on the show, it's weird that I called this a show now. Anyway, on the show that we have really focused on like, here's your consulting business and a way to coach other people into finding jobs and things like that. What I like about the common thread with each of these, with each of the consultants that we have on the show today, their clients are like big potatoes kind of clients. It's where you go into the university and say, I have this expertise, and you should pay me for that expertise. And I'm really excited to be able to hear their stories, that they have to share, and some like the bumpiness that came with making this transition. Some have made it significantly before COVID, and some just a little bit more fairly recently. And so being able to specifically tap that love that you have for students, people think is something that's not a good reason to hire someone, but it is. I believe that these people are passionate about what they do, and I'm excited for us to hear more. Next week we have our conversation is going to be all about leaving academia in the middle of graduate school. For those of you who are in the thick of it right now, and you think that I just don't want to finish right now. How do you navigate those conversations? How do you think those through? And so I'm really excited for that conversation next week. But that's next week. And so let's talk about tonight. So I'm just going to bring them up on the screen, and I'll just have them kind of just give them a little quick intro as they come on, and then we'll kind of get into things. And so without further ado, here we go. We have Julie, Christine, Evan, and Dianna. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with Julie. And then we'll just kind of go around the square with Christine, Evan, and then Dianna. Share with us your like who you are and why you're here today.
Yes. Hello, Eric. And it is a pleasure to be on a panel of what I see as really innovators. I think this is going to be a topic and an area within higher ed that only grows. And so it's exciting to be here as a part of this group and to talk about these topics tonight. So glad to be here again, Dr. Julie Murray-Jensen.
Excellent. Christine Lustik, and I am coming at you from beautiful, snowy Missoula, Montana today. And I'm also so grateful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm honored to be with such esteemed colleagues here, fellow consultants. What a privilege. Evan Moore, Real Frequency, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know we have a lot to share. I love airing out the bumps in the road and talking about our big potatoes. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dianna Renz, Mission Fulfillment Consulting, and very excited to be here with these folks today. We had a very fun pre-meeting session and talked a little bit about, the fact that there are, as Evan indicated, some bumps in the road that, certainly it's not always an easy path, but we are eager to share with you our experience. Maybe it will be helpful for you as you're making transitions in your own lives.
Okay. And just to kind of reiterate, in case you didn't see the flyer, we have a wealth of experience here from across the board, from the different types of roles that we have at universities. And so thank you again, all of you, for being here. So let's start into it and really kind of like the opportunity to share our story, because I think that so many people out there have their own stories that they're living through, and that each of them are unique, they're unrepeatable, but we also they tend to have threads that kind of connect them together. And so kind of like tell us, kind of walk us through like what you were doing before you became to where you are now, and then the type of consulting that you do. And so let's kind of go the other way. Let's go with Dianna and then Evan, and we'll take it from there.
Great, Eric. Thank you. I think you're asking for a little bit of our origin story. And I'm going to go all the way back a little bit, but briefly, I'm an Oregon native, got my bachelor's degree there, moved down to California, got my master's degree there, stayed in California Bay Area and taught high school for 7 years. That was my introduction into the world of education in general. I was 23 years old, very idealistic, and I was going to change the world. And moved to Wyoming in 2005, started teaching as an adjunct there, and was quickly recruited into administration, and loved it. Really loved that work, loved being an advocate for faculty members, because I had that experience of teaching all day in front of a group of students. And recently moved to Idaho, served as an associate vice president there. Right now, I'm establishing mission fulfillment consulting as focused on community colleges. I just really have a passion for community colleges and the work that they do, the mission that they have in the world. I think that community colleges are going to be able to serve the future in a way that no other entity really can. Or has a mission to do so. And so I really want to support those community college leaders. I know that they have, things that are keeping them awake at night, and really want to help them out, support them, bring the breadth and depth of experience that I have. I've had the opportunity to work with everyone at the institution, from senior leadership to the front line, and really, it was like I have something to offer. And so I'm ready to take it out to a broader audience. I'm excited about the fact that in this new role, I can have an impact on supporting multiple institutions rather than just a single entity. And so that's exciting.
Cool. So great. I'm privileged to have actually worked with Dianna in the past. So I know she's the real deal. I am also the real deal, just in a different manner. I was in higher ed for a decade, and after grad school, I knew I wanted to get in with colleges and be involved within the process. I knew I wanted to teach, and I knew I wanted to be within. Yeah, that's great. We are. And I make a connection with students. My path was unconventional in some ways. And I say that because everybody's path is unconventional. So at Real Frequency, we work with high schoolers and help their transition to college, and not just the admissions process or the essay writing process per se, but really finding what intrinsically drives them to succeed, motivate them to persist, and then most importantly, complete. That's the meat and potatoes of what a college is, right? So I worked in higher ed collegiately for 10 years as a teacher and a director of Dual-Enrollment, and I thought I could probably have a bigger impact doing this myself without the constraints of bureaucracy and politics, which I know we're all very familiar with, and frankly, really large systems can't exist without a hierarchy. So you're going to have those problems that are intrinsic with having people call the shots. And within our department, we were very successful in our dual enrollment department. We helped thousands of students transition from high school to college with college credit while they were in high school, and we saw how that helped them. I decided, I think I can help a broader base if I do this privately. Not only that, I'm in control of my own decisions, and those decisions affect me and only me, and my purpose is there for the student. I can help them go anywhere, not just the college I was working for. So I know we'll get into this. It's a journey, a battle, craziness. We're building the ship as we're sailing it in many ways. But I can't tell you how happy I am that I made that decision. So thank you.
No, this is. I think that that the two of you so far have really touched on, I think, two pain points that a lot of people are probably feeling right now. Of just the amount of bureaucracy, but also just you add on this layer. Like, I'm almost like silver lining, like grateful that I'm no longer in higher education at this moment. And this was even before I got my job that I started last week. That like just like having to deal with all of the stress that is happening right now from a teacher's perspective, from a faculty's and or from administration, just like not having to deal with it. And then this other feeling like that. So all that burnout that happens, but then just that desire and that want to do good and knowing that you could do better in a different scenario. And like in a different environment. And I don't think that it's a space for everybody to do that. But if you do have that, then it's just a matter of kind of like making that jump, making that plunge.
Productivity, Eric, for sure. And I don't want to divert too much because I know we have a lot to cover here, but a good friend of mine, when I was deciding to leave the college, which is a big step, I had a lot of security. They paid me well. I loved my people I worked with. But he said the only two things present in business and education are productivity and politics, and those two things are diametrically opposed. And if those things are present, you're not going to have productivity. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's why I've been pulling out all my hair every single last bit to find that productivity that I like battle uphill. So once I was able to separate those two and understand, okay, going privately, I'm taking the politics out of it. All of a sudden, all this productivity came to me, and I felt like, oh, wow, I'm worth something. All my knowledge and all this education that we have, I can put it towards something.
Yes.
I feel good about it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm really looking forward about this conversation. And just like I feel like there are so many people who are leaving higher education right now who don't feel like they're good enough. And I think that the higher education system kind of embeds that feeling into a lot of people. And so I'm excited to hear about how you were all able to overcome those feelings and be able to kind of get into what you do. And so Julie and Christine, tell us your story and what brought you here.
So I got into higher education. I've been faculty, instructional design, project management, and spent the last 6 years of my time at Western Wyoming Community College as director of distance education, doing online outreach and dual, kind of overseeing all of that. And I loved it. And I felt like I made a difference, and it was a good thing. But I left higher education 10 years ago. We'll kind of get into the whys a little later on. And that's a long time ago. I was just realizing yesterday as we had our pre-planning meeting. But I didn't make the full jump. I first went to Pearson, working within higher education from without, but not having to run it. And I did that for 4 years. I now, for the last 6 years, I've owned my own company, Mindfulness in Organizations. And I work with individuals and teams within higher education, but also in other organizations, to help them become more resilient and aware, to really help them be able to focus, deal with stress, deal with the uncertainty of everyday life, much less years like 2020. And my goal has been always to help others who, like me, are educated. I left higher education 2 years after completing my PhD in education. who are educated and really actually in something they care about, it's just not working for them. How can I help people who are passionate about what they do be able to keep doing what they do, have the tools they need to stay focused and balanced and to work as a team, so that they can stay in those areas that they're passionate about. So now I work one-on-one with those, and I come from the back end and try to support the educators and administration and everybody doing the hard work so that they can stay there and keep doing that.
And me, that's a great description, Christine, because there's so much of a need for resilience right now. And I am definitely a picture of that. So my origin is I have been in higher ed for more than a couple of decades. I started out that RA in college that loved student development. I got my master's degree, really went up the student affairs pipeline, and ultimately became a dean of students and then a vice president of student affairs, which I loved. But then I shifted over to enrollment, which a lot of student affairs folks do, and then external affairs and fundraising. And then I really fell in love with workforce development. So for me, my purpose really has become, how do I serve higher education and education in general to help people find meaningful work and to really work on systems to support social and economic mobility. My experience is really broad. I've worked at 2-year institutions and 4-year privates and publics across the Midwest, but also the West Coast. And so I feel like that kind of background of broadness has really been a good fit for consulting, because within my purpose of really wanting people to lift up economically and socially, I can do lots of different types of consulting. So it's been, I'm new to it. I've just been doing it this year, but it's been a good fit because of the depth and breadth in my background. And I'll talk a little bit more about why I left higher ed and why I think I can be more useful here. But I think that, my long background has really helped me spring this in a way that I think it will be strong, and I'm excited to be here.
This is I'm excited because to hit that last point that you said, Julie, that it's hard to go into higher education and not learn lots of skills, and not be like you're forced to learn how to do a lot of things, and that kind of goes back to what Evan was talking about earlier about this idea of that, like, there are politics that are involved in so many different ways, and having to navigate those. For me, like getting that crash course, like, cause I finished my doctorate in 2018, and so 2 years ago, that same timeline, leaving 2 years afterwards of getting a PhD, and it's just like there's this crash course that you just don't get when you're in graduate school, that you're kind of semi-aware of. And what that then leads to is just this constant feeling of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing it in the right way? Which leads to a lot of the different feelings that each of you have kind of tapped in with, like, you want to help people to feel more fulfilled in the work that they're doing, whether that's a small team scale or whether that's at a large scale with an entire university or entire department, helping them do what they want to do better. And so I think that's really valuable. But it can kind of come at a cost. And the one that I think is kind of like really touching on a lot of people right now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic is making that decision first to leave higher education. I've said this on multiple occasions that it's akin to leaving a religion. You are so involved. You put your entire life into this culture, into building this up, and then you have to make a decision to leave. And so let's kind of like spend a little bit of time there about like what were some of those reasons for making that decision. And this time we'll go around the other way, and we'll start with Julie, because you just kind of kicked that off with with that conversation in there. So let's go for there.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So, it's interesting because I don't really think of it as leaving. I guess I feel like I'm more broadly defining how I can serve the academy, because I plan to consult with higher ed and outside of higher ed. And so my focus, I think a key piece is really kind of defining what your purpose is, and then how both in and out of higher ed you can serve that purpose. So it's a different role. It's more of a support role. But one of the reasons I left is because I felt like my strengths for this time in higher ed were not a good fit. I'm one of those, and I don't know if you're strengths-based people, but I'm one of those achievers, activators, lots of drive. And I think at this point in higher ed, for a lot of institutions, and this has been my experience, and it is a generalization, but I think where the industry is going, there's so much fear that that I felt like my particular strengths I could better serve from the outside, because I had all this experience and all this knowledge. But higher ed, at a lot of institutions at least, is really at a time of retraction. And so the idea of being a consoler, which is really, I think right now in higher ed, a lot of leadership really needs to be in kind of a consoling, definitely strategic, but a consoling role, because it is a time where people's lives often are being negatively affected. And so I just felt like my desire for program development and growth and initiative and innovation, I could do that better from the outside. And that's why I really chose consulting.
Okay. I don't think that was the answer that I was anticipating, really. Because but it's at the same, like, it's one that just really resonates with me, that I have I'm kind of a badass. I think I'm pretty good at doing this stuff. And just
I want you to quote that. I will wear that to be a badass.
Yeah. And I feel like it's okay to own that and be like, you know what? Like right now in this space, rather than feeling, I love that consoling role that you talked about.
Yeah.
Like rather than feeling so bogged down, you can actually turn that around to feel empowered. And I think that.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll make this quick because I want to hear what other folks have to say, but I think that you get to a point in your career, you have to really own who you are. And I think having some self-awareness about your purpose, about the strengths that you bring, and thinking about how can I best apply those in the times we are in. And some of that is the particular institution, some of that is the culture, some of that is the role. And that was really a painful assessment for me through some painful experiences that I determined that this was the best way that I could make a difference. So it's very empowering as much as it is painful. And I think it's a real potential for lots of folks right now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so happy that this is happening right now. Okay, before we hear other stories, I forgot to this. I just want to throw out the reminder. We already had one question that we'll come back to from the audience. But please, each of our candidates, they've been able to offer like a 30-minute session. If you let me start that over. Please submit your questions and you get a chance to win a 30-minute coaching session. And then that's all I'll say about that. And so, how about Dianna? What's your story about why you left? And then we'll go to Evan and then Christine.
Eric, thanks. Julie said it well. There is, we go into education because we feel passionately about this. My experience, my words of I'm going to change the world at 23. This is not uncommon. People do not go into education generally because they're looking for summers off. They're, wanting the great pay. People go into education because they we're passionate about what we do. And, and the reality is in my experience, Eric, I was recently in a position where there were some misaligned expectations. According to, what I felt were national standards for the position that I applied for, there was a job to be done, and the institution felt that there was a different flavor that they wanted to bring there. And there was a case of misaligned expectations. Ultimately, I was let go. Here I was 45 years old and let go from a job. And you know what? It was the biggest blessing in my life. I had been thinking about going out on my own for a number of years, more recently in the last few years. But, after this big shift in my life happened, I talked to some of my colleagues from the past, and they were like, no, you've been talking about this for a while. And the reality is it's a lot like what Julie said. I really, and they're right. Several years ago, I got to a point where I was like, maybe I can be a blessing to other institutions more if I am doing this on my own. Kind of like Evan said, if I'm, able to reach out to all these different entities and able to serve in this different way, it really was, it gave me the opportunity to pursue a dream that I've had for years. And quite frankly, I'm the primary breadwinner for my home. I don't know that I ever would have had the courage to step out on my own. But now I love it. This is what I was meant to do. And like you said, we develop a wide breadth of talent or skill set in higher ed, and we have things to offer to the world. And I really believe that. And I think these people that you see here in front of you are a great example of that. So I'm going to stop now and let someone else speak.
Yeah, good stuff, Dianna. A couple things come to mind. I didn't think I was a badass, although other people within the institution thought that I thought I was a badass, which is why they thought I was leaving, because they thought I was too good. Not the case at all. And as far as leaving my heart at the institution and feel like I was leaving education, I did feel that way for the first day, driving away from the college the last time after almost 8 years of driving there every day and going through I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But now that I've found my venture and really been embedded, I've never been more involved with higher ed before in my life. I mean, through grad school, through my doctoral program, through working at colleges. Now, not only am I working with multiple colleges at a time, but I'm learning new systems that they're implementing and learning how they do things and their admission processes and their bias towards different subsets of students, as opposed to a singular vision and objective at the college I was working at. And within that, I didn't have to deal with all the drama. I mean, we all had to deal with drama at our institution, I'm sure. And there was no shortage of that, whether it be politically, whether it be with your coworkers. And that's a distraction. And then other distractions as far as, meetings that maybe you don't feel like you should be going to, or meetings that we go to that don't make any sense and we're not heard. Those frustrations build up over time. And again, not that I knew any better. And there were times where I thought, am I the crazy one here in this meeting? Because none of this, I don't know, we probably can't swear on this, so I won't. But none of this stuff is making sense. And then there would be certain colleagues that say, did any of that make sense? And they say, no, I'm glad you said something, because we weren't sure we were there for 2 hours either. So not only am I more embedded with education, but I don't have to be distracted by some of the nonsense that was really bogging institutions at a real high level down. If they had been, if things had been going smoothly and everything's, hitting on all cylinders, we'd all be out of a job. There wouldn't be a consulting position for us to start after we left anyway. So we're in need, we're being leveraged, and we know that we're important to a large degree. So thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. So right now we're answering the question, what made us decide to leave higher ed? I did just want to say that there's so many excellent questions coming in. I'm tempted to veer off, but I know, just so for those of you putting those questions out there, we're actually going to be getting to exactly that stuff after this round. So So why did I leave higher ed? To be clear, I loved higher ed. I loved students. I felt like I made a difference in a very large geographic area. I loved what I did in higher ed. And I felt like I'd taken my program as far as that school was going to allow me to do that. So that left me with a choice. And I had a couple things going on. One of them was I felt honestly like there was something like that. This is great. I love this. And yet I'm meant to do something else. I don't know what that is yet, but my purpose is broader or different than what I'm doing right now. And the other thing I had to recognize was that my health was suffering. And others haven't really discussed this, but I've seen this a lot in higher ed in the work I've done since. And while I was there, I got to a place where I'd had digestive issues for years and long-term headaches and ongoing different things like this that if we're not paying attention, they just tell us are because we're getting older. But the reality is it's called stress. And I either had to learn how to handle that to stay in that place or make a change. And so I actually, when I left higher education and decided, okay, I was going to make a change and figure out why do I have this feeling that I have a different purpose, that I should be doing something else. I need to figure that out. And by healing myself, being like, oh, that was when I realized I could have stayed there and stayed in what I love doing if I'd had the tools to do it. That gave me my purpose and my mission of helping all the other people I'd seen struggling in higher education actually stay and do that work. The work we'd been paid a lot to be educated to do and to stay there. So I left higher education because I felt like physically and mentally and emotionally I had to save myself. But that is also what allowed me to come back and support higher education from the outside so other people could continue to do that work.
This is so fantastic. Just the variety and the breadth of the reasoning and also the desires of what you all have expressed to really kind of like tap into that thing that kind of got us into education in the first place is just that desire to help other people. I think that there is maybe medicine, but like just like the natural altruism that comes with being an educator, and then understanding that you do have value despite the pay that comes with it, and that can be turned around in a way that can help other people while also taking care of yourself. I had those stomach issues, right? And it's difficult to be able to admit that out loud. And then more important to be able to find that network of people who will support you and not kind of, get the shit talking that you could swear that Evan was talking about before, right? I'm leaving for a variety of different reasons. But as Christine said, we've got some great questions coming in too, and please keep them coming in. And we're kind of the question that I had popped up was, how was this? How did you build your business, and what were those bumps in the road? But I think that this would be a really good time to kind of incorporate some of the questions that we have from our audience. This one right here from Andrea Hines that I kind of popped up there earlier. I love the diverse experience, high school to higher ed. It's encouraging. And so this one, how do we frame our experience in a way that is attractive potential clients in higher ed? And then actually, I feel like all of these questions kind of have a very similar vein. And so I'm just going to put this one right here from Mike Mullen about how have any of you translated your experience in national connections into an in-demand consultancy? And so it's about like framing our experience for this market. We'll stick with those two for right now. And so what are your thoughts, panel, about some of these being able to channel this experience specifically for this audience, who would at one point might have been a former employer even. Who wants to take it on?
I could.
How about, all right, Evan, let's start with Evan, and then we'll go from there.
I'll be brief. I'm really grateful. For so long, I've had many regrets, as we all have, in things that we've done when we were younger with hindsight, right? To be able to leverage that and collect all of those experiences into one, and then help a client through those experiences that they may be going through at that very same time, having the empathy, having the sympathy, and really being able to connect with them on a visceral level about that is what makes my business a business. I wouldn't be able to do it if I wasn't always vulnerable, always honest, sometimes brutally, sometimes to a fault, to my own fault. But what's the point if we're not able to connect? I'm not there to stroke people along and tell them what they want to hear, or not help them through a very difficult decision when I can't bring my own experience to the table and share a moment. Like, where the hell is the human interaction without that? And we're all humans. Like, I think we really get caught up in large universities and institutions as being just that. And it's like a living, breathing thing in its own, doesn't have feelings, but it makes decisions on its own. No, we're all humans within it. We all have desires. We all have needs. We all have issues. We all have problems. Kids at home and dealing with COVID and any number of things. So if I can't connect on that level, which I felt like I was inhibited when I was at an institution, then I'm not worth as much as I could be. So that really is where I derive a lot of joy, a lot of energy, and a lot of worth that my clients really receive. Sometimes they don't even know they're getting it, but they're like, something about this company is different, and I think that's it. So that's my piece.
I guess oh, sorry, Julie.
No, that's okay. Jump in.
I guess I'll echo what Evan just said. The ability to be on my own allows me, like we've reiterated several times, I have a passion, we have passions, we want to help people. And I see a lot of institutions struggling. And I want very much to be a help and a service to higher ed. You can call it ego, you can call it experience, but I absolutely have some solutions for you. I do. And I'm eager to offer them. I guess the piece that Evan said that kind of resonated with me as well, that I was considering just yesterday, the reality is I can be my authentic self working for myself, and I can bring myself to the table. I can bring my genuine, authentic self to my clients. And I've chuckled about this a couple of times. By the time I find out where all the cobwebs are in the institution, I can walk away. I don't have to, lay awake being frustrated about that. By the time, I've deposited all my enthusiasm on everybody at the institution, and they're like, this is a bit much, they get to walk away from me too. And we get to reconnect next year for another project. I've got a lot to offer, and I'm spreading it around a little bit, so that everyone can benefit. I think I wanted to address Mike's question briefly as well. I have worked very hard to maintain my connections with national organizations that I have worked with over the last 15 years. I'm new to the consulting world, but I'm not new to higher ed. And so those relationships that I've built over time are really important to me. I still am serving on the advisory board for the National Community College Benchmark Project. I still have regular conversations with the Modern Think Higher Education Insight Survey team, the Great Colleges to Work For survey, and you know, possibly, you know, I want to support their work as well. There are entities that I believe in the good work that they're doing, and I want to. I just wrapped up work for a client this past week and made some recommendations that they participate in some of these, you know, data collection and other types of projects that I really think can be effective for higher ed. But also I was able to provide them with some tools to make use of those resources on their campus. And so, yeah, so those national entities, national connections are important. And bringing your authentic self to the table, it feels pretty great.
Okay, I really value, and just to kind of bring in this follow-up comment from Mike right here about like really appreciating the idea of allowing ourselves to be authentic, to be true to who we are. And I think that's really important to be able to identify what makes us an authentic human. And then I love the way that it was originally posed, to the idea of being able to translate that value, that authenticity, whether it's a passion for like if you go to a conference, like you're great at networking at a conference, like that's the thing to tap, like that's how you translate that value. So let's Julie and Christine, like what are your thoughts on this idea about ways that people can specifically translate their experience for their audience, for their market?
Yeah, it's so fun to read all the comments. So thank you for folks that are really engaged here. So I sense in some of the comments really feeling stuck. It's such a crazy time in higher ed. It's such a crazy time in our country, in this world. And so that feeling of feeling stuck, gosh, I just so empathize with that. So I just wanted to give a shout out for that. I would say as a remedy to that, one of the best things you can do, and what I've really focused on in my consulting, is being proactive. And so I had someone tell me once that leadership in higher ed is the most personal work you can do, but it is not about you. Mm-hmm. And I think that is applicable to being a consultant. It's very personal. You're bringing your authentic self. You are selling yourself. You're connecting and networking, but yet it's not about you. So what I've done, and I'm still learning too, of course, is I've done a lot of selective networking within the areas that I'm really passionate about, that I think I can contribute the most and serve the best. And then I've listened really carefully to what the challenges are. And I've tried to connect what my skills are and what I can offer to those challenges. And so having that kind of dialogue where it's not about you, it's about what you can do during this really challenging time in higher ed to solve big problems in a sustainable way. And that's why I am convinced that this kind of work is only going to grow, right? Because institutions need to be innovative, they need to be sustainable. There's more pressure to do that than ever. And we can offer those skills by listening carefully, by knowing who we are and what we offer, by really being problem solvers in those areas that need it. And so that's what I've done. And a lot of it's been individual and relationships that I've already had, but also relationships that I'm building. And people are interested because I'm helping them solve their problems. It's not about me, it's about what they're going through and how I can assist. And sometimes I can't, but often I can. Often I can, offer up. And sometimes, a lot of it you do for free because you're building those relationships in the beginning. And then before you know it, with being proactive and having really carefully crafted proposals, you end up getting more work, at least in my case, thankfully so, than you even anticipated. So we'll see. Ask me in a year, but that's what I've been doing so far.
Excellent. Love it, Julie. I will piggyback on Dianna and Julie, their relationships. So the national organizations, especially that you're a part of, in higher education, maintain those relationships. I just spent time this fall working one-on-one with the staff of a national organization and doing the sessions at their virtual conference for an organization that I was on the board of over 10 years ago and have kept in touch with. So I keep reaching out. How can I serve you? How can I make this work? And that's really, and not only just reaching out, like wanting something from them, always reaching out, like, how can I serve them, has really been beneficial. But I wanted to give a specific suggestion to the question of how do we frame our experience in a way that is attractive to potential clients. And the reality is, and this is where we tend to second guess ourselves, but sit down and make a list of your own pain points that you see in your department, in your organization. What are the pain points? That's what you're speaking to. I know we all want to think we're special. Every organization, every institution thinks they're special. They all have the same pain points. Trust me. So really just do the work of sitting down and making that list of pain points, making the list of your qualifications that actually helped you solve those pain points, and then run with that. Go with the vocabulary, the terminology in higher education, and you can then move forward and speak directly to the people out there looking, because you know what they're looking for.
I think that's that's a really, really important point that I want to touch on. That whether, and this is, I think, for whatever position that you're in, if you are looking for a job, or you're starting a consultancy and you're looking for clients, which is looking for a job, right? Like looking for that income. One of the most important things that you need to do is speak their language. And this is what educators do really, really well. We know how to go in and how to learn about something and then be able to talk about it. And we need to add that other layer in, because we're so used to talking to people who are kind of expecting us to have answers anyway because of the positions that we're in. But now we're going into a situation where you need to be able to speak their language after you have identified your own strengths and translated your strengths into their language. It was a mind-boggling experience for me when I hired a resume writer to help me revamp my everything, because I didn't know the language. And then when I got it back, I was downright amazed at the things I had done, and using the language that they talked about. And I think that this concept goes really well with one of the questions that was asked too. From David Donnelly. He says, it seems like a lot of the work involves sales. Were you good at that before you went out on your own? And so kind of like, did you have sales experience in the past? Or another way to ask that question, how were the things that you were already doing in your position sales type things?
Oh man.
Evan, you want to start us off again there?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in sales. And prior to grad school, it's how I got to grad school. It's how I thought I would pay for it, right? And I'd sell anything. I didn't care. I didn't really have any particular passion. As long as it made me money, I was happy paying the bills and getting to the goal of going back to school. Come the time that I started my own business, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to use all that sales experience that I have and utilize it for my own company. It's just like another thing, right? No, completely different. I am so attached to this. I am so ingrained. My heart is in it. I remember I'm a part of the local business Rotary Club, and I had to get up there for the first time in front of, I don't know, 200 people and tell everyone what I did and sell myself. I was shitting my pants because I was so scared. I was like, why am I so nervous? I've done this 100 times. I've taught classes at a large scale. I speak at assemblies. All of a sudden, I'm petrified to sell myself. Like, what if no one buys? and I realized how personal it is. And the sales aspect of it really comes from you showing your genuine desire and care to I don't know, utilize your skills to help other people. And it took me a while to break that up. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and it took me a good 6 months to really get that ingrained in my brain. Like, oh, I'm not selling widgets here. I'm selling an experience. I'm selling peace of mind, no stress. And once I got that, it started to come pretty naturally.
That's a great question. In some ways, I want to say that's all I've been doing in higher ed. I've been convincing, trying to convince Christine that, program review will be helpful for her. I mean, this is what I've been doing. I convince people that, they should use data and it will be useful for them. In some ways, that's all I've done is sales. But Evan's right. There is a totally different feel when you are on your own. And so I guess in a short response, it's not about the sales. It's about the relationships. Going back to what we kind of talked about before, I have been, I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't really, Evan's brave to go to the Chamber of Commerce. That's not, something that would be natural for me at all. But I have really, really put a lot of effort into, number one, ensuring that I maintain those relationships that I already had. And number two, I have really been very active on LinkedIn. It has become my new office water cooler space. I post regularly. I comment on people's posts. I make practice of making phone calls with people that I've met on LinkedIn, and just building connections. I've had some really great conversations with people that I never ever would have met otherwise. And so, that for me, that's a big piece. Now, that being said, I cannot say today that I've, landed a contract because I posted on LinkedIn, but how else am I going to let people know that I'm out there? Particularly in this world that we're living in now with COVID, it's not like, it's not like I can go door to door, and have a lot of impact. So, that's a piece for me is really building relationships. It's not about sales. It's about building relationships so that people know who I am, people know what I can offer, and ideally they're going to come to me. I won't have to make the sale.
Before Julie and Christine, I want to be you to have the opportunity to answer this question as well about the idea of selling yourself and tapping your experience and your passion and your authenticity and really just acknowledging that if you're passionate about it, it's not really sales. Like it's just something that you do. But I just want to add this: LinkedIn is an amazing place. If you are trying to make a transition in your career into a different field or into consultancy, LinkedIn is the place to go and do that. You would be amazed. I can say with absolute certainty, this panel would not have happened without LinkedIn. Had Dianna and I not connected. And there are some beautiful, beautiful relationships that I have built over the past several months that just would not have happened on a different platform. This is like LinkedIn is the place to go to establish that professional identity. And as a consultant, especially if your consultancy is your name at LLC, that it becomes even more important that you have that brand, and that you get that out there. So I just wanted to add that in before we go to. And so, Julie and Christine, like, what are your thoughts about this idea of being able to sell and being able to connect with your audience that way?
Why don't you go first this time, Christine?
Okay. I have a short answer. As far as selling, I think one of the things that gets in a lot of our ways when we think of selling is what motivates us. And I just had to come to the realization all along that I'm not motivated, was never motivated to be a salesperson because I'm not actually very motivated by money. My husband hates that. So, so once I realized that, though, I went back to exactly what the others are saying, is that as a director of distance education, I've been selling all along, trying to get people to buy into online education, right? I can share what I'm passionate about. So the big thing about getting over selling is if I feel like I have to get that sale because I need the money, I'm going to suck at it. But if I'm really just trying to share something and help that person, something that I love, it's going to be a lot easier. So I would say really be clear about your motivation and the why, and the selling is going to come much more naturally.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good points. Can anyone see me? I don't. Okay, something happened to my computer. Can everybody see me now?
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. Maybe it's my I have some fundraising in me, and I also have enrollments, that background. And I really enjoyed those roles. I know a lot of people don't, but I did. And so I do think for me, there is an element of selling. And I don't see that negatively. I see that a reality. I think the world we are in now, and gosh, this is going to sound cynical, and I see myself as a very optimistic person. But we are in a world now, I believe, that a lot of times your work does not speak for itself. There's so many distractions. There's so much competition that you really do have to get good at articulating what you can do. And really, you want it, of course, it needs to be genuine and, authentic and real and speak to your strengths. But you have to brand yourself, whether it's online and using the various social media networks, whether it's the personal relationships, which honestly, I really rely on my networking probably more than anything to sell myself, being visible. I spend a good portion of my time, and some of that might be driven by anxiety to get the next gig, right? So some of it is, that I feel like, gosh, I'm establishing myself as a consultant. I'm always looking ahead, and there's a level of anxiety because you're wondering when your next project is going to come. So for me, it is a portion of the job that is unavoidable. Now, I like it because I feel like it aligns with my strengths, but there's an element of that that's also, a little bit anxiety producing. And so you have to understand that sometimes people are not going to get back to you. You've got to understand that sometimes you're going to do a great proposal and it's going to get right to when you sign, and then they're going to back out. And so I've had to really understand that, 9 times out of 10, it may not come through, but I know what I'm offering is valuable, and you keep going, and you've got patience and persistence, and that is going to carry you. And so there's some self-esteem you got to have in place, I think, to do this work well, and then understand that there's going to be ups and downs. But for me, there is an element that really is sales, and you have to almost embrace that.
Okay, this has been fantastic. I feel like I've said that so many times in this conversation. We'll wrap up our conversation now, just with each one of our panelists giving here is my piece of advice if you're going to be following down this road. But before we do that, just congratulations to all those who are our winners, Andrea, Mike, David, and Jessica. Congratulations. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll connect you with the people that we have. And just to kind of, I want to throw this last, Andrea just asked, if any of you do writing for journals or blogs. So this will be my little piece of advice before we turn it over, is to do that on LinkedIn. To find the way to establish who you are in a really easy way is to engage on LinkedIn. One of the first things a recruiter is going to do, or a potential client is going to do, is look at what you're doing on LinkedIn. And if it's blank, you're just making it harder for them to make that decision. And so that'd be my go, and I've said that before, but so go connect with me on LinkedIn. And so we'll start just that little piece of advice. Christine, if you'd like to kick us off, and then we'll go with Evan, and then Julie, and then Dianna. So what's that one piece of advice?
So the one piece of advice I'd give you is to go in, to take a little business sense, not just to like fly things to the wind. How much money do you need to make? How much you're going to charge? That tells you how many clients you need. Okay. Do the math, figure it out, get a coach or something, because then you can stop struggling with that like feeling of, oh, I need this or I need that. Know how many clients you need every year. Know and have the ideas of how you're going to source them out. Then you can much more enjoy the journey of the clients that you have in the moment.
Good. I couldn't second that anymore, because that's brilliant advice. I would say I'd add trust yourself and be kind to yourself. And it's a hell of a ride, man. So hold on. And if you can just bear through some of the real difficult times, and know that if you hold on a little bit longer, it does get better. And have fun with it. Hell of a ride right there. It's a hell of a ride.
I would say that, gosh, there's so much conversation about marketing. And for me, my marketing is really networking. So know that you don't have to have a billboard, a radio ad. We've talked about the online, that is important. But really those relationships and the networking, listening carefully to solve problems, to me, that is the most effective marketing that you can do.
Wow, I'm really liking Evan's advice. Just hold on tight, because that's where I'm at right now. And I guess that's the reality of it is, there's no, in some ways there's no safety net. You're on your own. You either, we talked a lot in our pre-planning meeting, do we tell them the bad, the bad news too? Yeah, it's, I have days where, the anxiety of the next client coming, but, building those relationships, marketing yourself, creating your own personal brand, being authentic about that, knowing your strengths. And I guess that's what I would like to end on, is each person who's listening to this podcast right now, every one of you have strengths, and every one of you have abilities that you can share with the world. And there is somebody out there who needs someone like you. I would say to you, additionally, as I've kind of thought about this last question, Eric, that all things considered, in terms of opening up your own business, this is a relatively minimal, there's cost involved, but relatively speaking, this is using your brain and using your resources. I think Christine said, get a coach. Yes, you should do that. Use your brain, use your resources, use your relationships. And it's a hell of a ride, but I love it. I'm so grateful to be serving higher ed in this way today.
I've just been kind of sitting back, just enjoying this and just feeling all the good feels from your answers. And I really appreciate it. Just the feeling of encouragement and just the genuine desire to help other people. And I think that is tied directly into this common thing that each of us have now talked about of just the sheer importance of connecting with people, whether that's for marketing purposes or whether that's to find a coach, or whether it is just kind of like bounce ideas off of somebody. One of the most important things that you can do right now in this moment is to connect with another human. Yep. And things will follow after that. You'll find a lot of confidence. you'll find that the thing that you need is most often going to be pulled out from you by another person. And so just make those connections. And I'm so grateful to have been able to make and cultivate these connections right now with each of you. And so I'll say thank you so much to each of you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We'll connect afterwards on LinkedIn, and also to our winners, Andrea, Mike, David, and Jessica. Please reach out to me, and I'll get those set up. Thank you so much for being here, my guests. All right, I'm still not great at taking people off the screen, so just bear with me
Thanks,
as I push buttons. I have a lot of things that I feel like I would want to say, and that I feel like I would want to add. But I think that they said it really, really well. Everybody who's listening right now, you have something that other people not only want, but you have something that people need. And you can probably identify that moment if you give yourself 10 minutes to think of the last time you were in a meeting and you had an idea that nobody wanted to listen to. There are people out there who will pay to listen to you. You have value, and not in just the intrinsic, like everybody has value. Like you have the type of value that people will pay you money for. It's a hard thing to do, but you can do it. You really can. And if you don't have that support network in your life right now to help you get to that point, there is one there waiting for you. I found mine on LinkedIn. And I think that's a really powerful place to be on right now, especially when there's any conversation that we have about jobs. There's just another article from Chronicle of Higher Education that's talked about the additional layoffs that we've been having. Up to 10%, I think is what it said, of the workforce in higher education has been laid off since COVID. Over 448,000 jobs now is what the count is. You're not alone. And there are people who want to talk to you and to help build that. And I thank you all for coming and for joining us right here. Andrea, we can hear you. I know you said yes. I was cheering out there when I was off camera too. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week, everybody.